Right, so we are in chapter number 8, and I hope that in the last 1 hour or so you have learned a lot of things and at least are in a position to start working with pandas on your own. And given some data sets, you should be able to at least run some basic data cleanup and data manipulation before you actually even think about supplying it to an algorithm and so on and so forth. So going forward, let's look at a few more concepts which may be helpful for you in your data analysis part. And essentially, we are going to look at three things in this lecture. Number one is occasionally when you get a lot of data, you might want to just plot some graphs or some plots to look at a visual representation of the data. And we'll discuss one such example over here. What I want you guys to do, at least as a part of assignment, is explore other graphs, right? So if we look at line plots right now, look at some code in which you can plot a histogram or a bar chart or something like that, right? Again, it's just some minor syntax changes here and there, but once given the data and once you know how to plot a graph, it's just a matter of studying the documentation and then maybe using a code for plotting a histogram and so on and so forth. I personally use this a lot and I like it. The second thing what we are going to discuss is if you have worked with SQL, you must know what are joins. We have inner joins, left joins, right joins, and outer joins. And basically we'll try to see how we can achieve something similar using pandas. Now, if you're not aware of the concept of joins, definitely there are resources out there. I'll put in a couple of more links, but I do have 2 lectures on that, which I go in very deep details about the concept of joins. So I'd encourage you to watch those lectures as well. The last one is we will discuss a little bit about data pivoting and the concept of pivot tables and how can we kind of take a data table and then pivot the data using very simple lines of code. So we'll look at a couple of examples as well. All right, so let us start with the first concept, creating plots. All right, so let me go ahead and actually start writing some code. And what I'm going to do over here is I am going to work with plots. And I put across a link over here, and you can use any time series data, any data which has some dates in it to work with it. I just googled this and I found this nice example. So I just downloaded it and used it. Now when you're watching this, if this link is no longer active, don't panic. Just Google for some time series data and then you should be able to work with any type of data using the same code. All right, so first and foremost, what I'm going to do is I am going to import the data. So I'm going to say pd.read CSV because it's a CSV file. And then I'm going to pass in that URL. Now I have downloaded that. So I'm just going to give my path, Udemy resources, and it's this one. So let me show you how the table looks like so that you know what you're working with. First of all, let's look at the shape. And oops, I think I restarted the kernel. So one thing I have to do over here is run the imports pandas statement again, and now it should work. All right, so it has 169 rows, and let's look at the data a little bit. And this is how the data looks like, right? So it's monthly milk production, pounds per cow. All right, so we have some data. Now what do we do next, right? It's actually very simple. If you just call the plot method, it'll actually plot a graph for you. Oops. So if you see, it used 0, 1, 2, 3 probably as the x-axis, and then it has plotted the monthly milk production in the y-axis, and it has kind of plotted a graph, right? So this is generally for quick and dirty analysis. You could just do that. Now as a part of assignment, please explore other graphs as well, right? A histogram or a bar chart or something like that, and please post the code so that people can learn more from your exploration. All right, so the next concept what I wanted to discuss is the concept of joins. And essentially it's basically taking two data frames and joining them. And again, I've posted a few links if you want to just learn the concept of joins a little bit more deeper. But in any case, we'll take a simple example so that just by watching this video, you should be able to get a good understanding of how the joins will work. So first and foremost, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create some dummy data, and I'm going to say pd.dataframe, and let's create some dummy data. So I'm going to say my column 1 is employee column, and it has some sample values, right? Let me just say ABC, XYZ, and then whatever, MNO. And my column 2 is salary column, and it contains some numbers, right? So 10,000, 125,000, and then something like 30,000. Okay, so it has this data. And if I just do data frame 1, you should see this, right? And similarly, what I'm going to do is I am going to just copy paste this, and I'm going to create a data frame 2 with definitely some different data in it. So it could be employee, ABC, XYZ, and I'll just write PQR just to keep it a little different. And then salary could be the same, I don't care, right? So this is my data frame 2, right? Now let's assume that I want to join data frame 1 and data frame 2 on the employee column, right? So join the rows where there are common employees. That's essentially your inner join, right? So ABC would be joined, XYZ could be joined, but MNO is something that will not be joined, right? So actually, just to keep it a little bit more easier to understand, let me just change this to age so that we have some different columns. So I'll just call this as 25 and then 30, right? So you have employee and age, and you have employee and salary, and you want to join them, right? So let's try out a inner join. And how do we do that? It's actually pretty simple, right? So I'm going to just say pd.merge, and that's it. So I'll just pass in data frame 1, data frame 2, and I'm going to say join it on employee. So whatever is the common employees across both the tables, you should join them. So ABC and XYZ are the common rows, so it'll join these two tables based on that. And if I just store that in data frame 3 and then just display my data frame, oops, let's see what we get. Sure enough, we were able to join merge both the tables, and then it did a good inner join between both the data frames. So this is basically what would be an inner join in SQL, right? And you could just extend that same concept, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece of code, and now I'm going to try an outer join. And how do I do that is essentially the same piece of code, but I'm going to just say how outer, and it'll give me that, right? So outer join means it's kind of joining both the tables on common rows, and wherever it doesn't find common rows, it'll just put a null or not a number, right? Again, you can actually extend this for a lot of things. So I'm going to try a left join. And how do I do that? If you want to take a strange guess, again, just change this to how equal to left, right? We did a left join. Similarly, if you take a guess for right, it's just the word right. So pretty simple stuff, how to merge two data sources, two data frames. And this is something you're going to use very, very frequently, right? So you're not going to generally work with just one data frame. It will be multiple data frames, and you need to know how you would, generally start merging them. Okay. The next one, which I use quite frequently again, is basically called as pivoting. And if you have actually used Excel, you must be knowing this a lot, right? So initially pivoting is nothing but transforming your columns and rows. So what I have done over here is I have actually created some dummy values, and this is just date in one, and then I have some web page names, just given it some strange names, and the number of hits it gets, right? So very simple data. And once you actually pivot this, the way that you would see is basically something like this. And let's say the page name and hits, you get an aggregation of this, right? So this is called as a pivot table. But if you simply switch your rows and columns, assume that A, B, C, P, Q, R, and M, N, O are your columns, and then you have maybe date or hits as rows. That's where you just interchange them, and that's basically called as pivoting your data, right? So let's look at an example so that it'll be more clear. So let me go ahead and actually import this file. I have saved it as a CSV in that same location. So I'm going to just say read CSV, and I'm going to just pass in the name. Okay. And let me go ahead and just store this in web traffic. And I'll go ahead and display the data to you as well. So simple stuff, whatever we just typed in is just coming in over here. And the first thing what I'm going to do is I am going to change the rows and columns, and basically I'm going to pivot it, right? And how do you do that? Again, it's very simple, and this is what I like about Pandas a lot, right? So you can do a lot of things using very simple one-line code. I just say web traffic dot pivot, and then just pass in what should be my primary column name, and in this case it's going to be say page name. I want my page name on as rows, and I want my date as my columns. And if I do that, I get an error. Let's see, what mistake did I do? Oops, probably this is the issue. Okay, right, so you have the page names here, and you have the dates as columns, and then you have interchanged your rows and columns. So simple stuff. Again, you could create pivot tables as well. So basically pivot tables is nothing but the intersection of rows and columns will have some sort of aggregation like we just saw, and the way you do it is again pretty simple. So I'm going to just use the same set of code, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say my aggregate function equal to sum. Okay, so let's say it's actually pivot table equal to sum. So now you get that you have the page names here, and it has actually aggregated all the page name, all the hits, right, irrespective of what date it appeared into. And again, you can just extend the same concept. You can actually do a mean instead of a sum, and you get an aggregate or an average or a mean. Again, you can extend this for maybe, let's say, for count. Right, you get counts as well. So plenty of things you can do in this, but generally it's kind of helpful to work with this. So hopefully you learned a few things here. I will add more exercises. Maybe you can actually search for a piece of code in the documentation which will allow you to put some totals as well. So in pivot tables, you generally have an option to display totals like grand totals. There is a simple syntax which you need to kind of add, right? I've given you a hint which will allow you to add the totals as well. So I want you guys to kind of find that out, and if you find it out, please post it in the Q&A as well. And again, if you want to revise the concept of joins, I've provided a few links that might be helpful for you guys. So hopefully these small things would be super useful for you when you get data. and then we'll learn about a little bit more things in the coming lectures and probably wind up this lecture series and then move on to the next module, module number 3 of the data science track. Thank you.